Reading slumps are afraid of me, trust me, and I will give you nine, don't count that one, palate cleanser books today that will have you glued to the pages and smashing that reading slump. If you don't know me, I'm a romance author and I use this channel to publish my audiobooks and to put up little updates on my writing life. If this is something you like, please subscribe and or check out one of my books. That said, the recommendations in this video will be beyond the romance genre, as I promised you palate cleanser books. I've been writing for years, but I've been reading since I could read. I've read hundreds of different books in the 3 languages that I'm fluent in, so a lot of the recommendations you hear today might be unfamiliar to you. Due to the algorithm and how BookTok works, a lot of the book recs you find nowadays on the internet are of the same recent popular books. This video won't be that. If you're looking to see if I recommend Sarah J. Maas or dissect A Little Life, you will be disappointed. This is not because I want to be quirky or unique, but because I want you to get the joy of discovery of a really unexpected read, something that you wouldn't normally pick up that pulls at your attention. This is how reading slumps end, my friend. Here's the format of the video. I will introduce 9 books of 9 different genres. Each introduction will have a little summary of the plot and characters and a little bit about why I think you should read it. Each recommendation comes from a reading scenario I've experienced, but I should also say that all of the books are great even if you're not in the slump. If you want to try something new or take a genre that you're unfamiliar with for a little spin, these books will work. And if you're a mood reader like me, they will also work. So basically just enjoy all of the recommendations. And last disclaimer, some of the books I own and some I have lent to friends and some I have borrowed from the library and returned. You don't see massive bookshelves in the background because I don't have them. Reading doesn't always look like buying tons of books, but it does involve consuming large quantities of words. So don't feel like you have to go on a shopping haul. If you like any of my suggestions, just obtain a copy in the easiest, least stress-inducing way for you. And this is coming from an author. I do want you to buy books and to support authors financially, but there are many ways to do that. And I'm more passionate about reading being accessible to you no matter your life circumstances. Okay, so I will start with something that happened to me recently. I was reading too many dark reads, and particularly dark romance. Part of it was research, part of it was just me enjoying the genre that I write in, but I needed a break from it as it got too dark. And then, boy, did the pendulum swing. I needed something warm and cozy, like something sickeningly sweet. So the next 3 books I recommend if you need something comforting and easy to read. They're engaging but non-threatening and go really well with something warm, like a hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. Number 1, The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary. Here it is. I actually do have this one. It's a romantic comedy. I have read a number of Beth O'Leary's books. Here's another one. Right here, The Flat Share is quite popular. It even had a BBC show made on it. I have enjoyed them all. There's just something really relatable in the way she writes her characters, and they really feel like you're hanging out with them as a friend as the story unfolds. And sometimes when you've read too much dark stuff, something very light, like a quirky friend telling you about their disastrous love story, is precisely what you need. I wasn't sure which book to pick for this recommendation, as all of her stories are so uplifting, but I went with The Road Trip. Here it is, as it was my most recent read. The premise is both simple and hilarious. Addie and her sister are driving towards her friend's wedding in Scotland, then they crash their car into 2 other guests, Dylan and Marcus, and they both have history with Addie, the main character. All of them are going to the same wedding, so Dylan and Marcus, when they lose their car in the crash, they decide to join the 2 sisters. Chaos ensues, and in the middle of it all, we learn more about the past and how sometimes good relationships can turn into great after some time apart. The supporting cast is hilarious, and this is the book that has one of the best descriptions of male friendship I have read. Here's number 2. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy. This is a graphic novel that feels like getting under a warm blanket on a cold day. It's like a hug for your mind. As the title suggests, there are four main characters: the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. You can see them all on the cover. Each are exploring some tough issues with kindness and simple wisdom. For me, this book is about friendship and how sharing your pain with others can help you process it. The illustrations are beautiful. I'm just going to open a random page. Amazing. And here is one of my favorite spreads close up. I read somewhere that the author was processing their grief after the loss of a friend through the drawing of these characters and sharing them on Instagram. So it was a popular concept before it was a book. And I'm so glad it's popular because I hear there will be a new book with the same characters coming in October 2025. And finally, wrapping up my cozy suggestions, number 3, we have Dollar Good Dream Department Store by Mie Lee, which was my favorite read of last year. I have a copy, but I recently lent it to a friend, which is a testament to how much I loved it. It's primarily a fantasy novel, but not in the way Brandon Sanderson writes fantasy or even Sarah J. Maas. The story follows Penny, who starts work in a dream department store in the dream world. The store sells dreams instead of products. Each floor offers a different type of dream. It could be childhood memories, food fantasies, adventures and holidays, even nightmares. We'll learn about the customers and their problems in the real world through the dreams they purchase every night. It's a quirky premise because the subtitle is "The Dream You Ordered is Sold Out." So there's actually an element of running a successful store and making sure staff get along and work goes smoothly. It's a warm book full of patience and acceptance of the human condition, but it's not always an easy book to read. I would say it was a bittersweet read for me, as it did make me cry at times. The way the customers pay for dreams is through emotion, not monetary currency. So I felt like I too paid for reading this book, and I was rewarded multiple times. The book was originally written in Korean, and I read it translated to English. I found the narrative voice very comforting, despite some of the more difficult topics that it explored. There wasn't an overt judgment cast on many of the issues, allowing the reader to draw their own conclusions, which I really appreciated. That's my cozy suggestions now done, and now we're going the other way, because maybe you actually want the opposite of cozy. You want violence and darkness. You want a dangerous world that will completely swallow you whole and make you forget your reality for a little bit. My next 3 palette cleanser books are going to do just that. Actually, I don't have much of them here because I did read them from the library, but I do have 3 books, an epic fantasy, a thriller, and a non-fiction book that is more contemporary horror wrapped in science. Okay, number 4, we have The City of Brass by Shannon Chakraborty and the whole Devabat series, actually. The story starts in 18th century Cairo, where the main character Nahri is thieving and swindling while hiding her healing magic. At some point, she accidentally summons Dara, who is a jinn warrior who was sealed away. Dara recognizes Nahri as a descendant of the Nahid healers, who are the rulers of the jinn in his world. Together, they travel to Devabat, the jinn city her ancestors built. But of course, it's not an easy journey, and once they arrive, they're not really welcomed with open arms. There's political intrigue, high-stakes action, amazing romantic tension, and there's some pretty deep character work. Dara himself is as morally gray as they come, and his path to redemption spans the whole trilogy. My most favorite thing about this series is actually the world, because the world is complex, it's full of life, and it's super easy to immerse yourself in completely. The monsters are scary but make sense, and the world is inviting to us, the readers, but is actually pretty harsh to the characters. I finished the trilogy 3 years ago, and I still think about it every month or so as little things remind me of it. According to Wikipedia, Chakraborty crafted this setting from a world-building experiment that she was doing, like a writing exercise. It was about how jinn societies might develop if shaped by human cultures and historical narratives. I love that approach because a lot of the folklore and history felt familiar, but the magic added to that fantasy feeling. And the result was a captivating setting that could exist even today, but just like a little bit hidden, a little bit invisible to the human eyes. And on the topic of invisible to human eyes, we have number 5, The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. A friend lent me this book for one reason only. Many of the chapters are told from the point of view of a cat, and I really, really like cats, so I dug in without needing much more convincing. I kind of want to leave it at that, but I know that there are some people who are not so unreasonably enamored by cats. So for you, weird people, here is what the story is actually about. It's about the inhabitants of a house at the edge of the woods. In usual thriller fashion, it's full of secrets, and as you read, reality starts to slip away, and nothing really makes sense until it finally does. The main characters are Ted, the man of the house, his cat Olivia, his daughter Lauren, who doesn't visit very often, and there's this random woman called Dee who is sure the house is somehow connected to her sister's disappearance. I don't want to say anymore because the twist is so satisfying, and the way it's written really makes you engaged into the unraveling of the characters in the story. The whole setting is just super immersive. Unlike the vast world of the Devabat trilogy, this world is just a house, yet it's still so alive and it's still so full of wonder and strangeness. This book is standalone, so once you have it in your hands, you will see the story through to the end. In its writing and vibes, the story feels both mundane and gothic, and the cat perspective really does help the reader go through the more difficult parts of the book. With its very feline, snarky tone, it makes things a lot more interesting and easy to grasp. And finally, for the dark reads, we have Ultra-Processed People by Chris Van Tulleken. I was actually afraid to read this book. I already have a complicated relationship with food, and I thought that the revelations in this book would completely destroy me. I would have to give up everything I liked, like KFC and cookies and soft white bread, but I was not really in the mood for anything fictional, so the cold hard reality of our food industry was just the topic I needed to get me out of my reading slump. So about this book, the author is a physician in the UK. He commits to eating a diet comprised of 70% ultra-processed food, and he wants to learn what happens to an otherwise healthy body if you go through that diet. He tracks weight, energy, desires, cravings, and through that personal narrative, he also introduces a number of studies and expert interviews that explain why he's suddenly overeating and why he suddenly feels so tired. What I really liked about this book is that it did acknowledge that it's hard to make healthy food choices on an individual level. For example, if the shops you can realistically go to don't sell fresh produce, you can't suddenly start eating more fresh veggies. If everything fresh is super expensive and you can't afford it, you don't really have that much control over your diet. And as someone with ADHD, if the easy options are all super processed and your brain can't really commit to meal prep and buying stuff and cooking every day, it's not entirely my fault that I keep reaching for the local KFC when I get really hungry. The author in general does a lot of TV interviews, and one of the things that he keeps repeating is how ultra-processed food is engineered to bypass our gut-brain signals and lure us into patterns that prioritize profit over well-being. This book won a bunch of deserved prizes and awards and turned out to be not as scary as I thought it would be. After reading it, though, I was totally ready to go back to my fiction reading, where the characters mostly don't talk about how their food is slowly making their lives worse, one day at a time. And actually, my next recommendation is also about food, but it's on the other end of the spectrum. It's empowering on the individual level and makes you think about what you can do for your own life and how you approach food. And because I decided to present these in groups of 3, the last group will be all about changing tone. Sometimes when I read genre fiction, I get tired of the tropes and specific writing styles that are popular at the time. But before you get offended, I'm not passing judgment on whether genre writing is good or bad. It's just that as a person, as a reader, I need variety, and I think a lot of other readers do as well. So the next 3 suggestions, the final 3, are more on the literary side of publishing. We have 1 literary fiction, 1 myth retelling, and 1 of the classics. Okay, back to food empowerment. Number 7. On my recommended list is Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. It's the story of Rachel, who works as an assistant in Hollywood and controls her diet through rigorous discipline. She meets Miriam, who works at a frozen yogurt shop, who is her complete opposite. She embraces food with pleasure instead of discipline. The two start a relationship that is about much more than attraction. There are discussions of faith, desires and restrictions are challenged, longing and guilt are juxtaposed. There are so many nuanced scenes between the two as they grapple with their own identities while trying to find common ground. Nothing much happens in this story, if I have to be honest, except for the sharp exploration of Rachel and Miriam's inner worlds. The prose is sometimes a little bit crude, but it delivers the author's message perfectly, and it's definitely a change of pace from the more neutral genre writing. This is not a romance book though. It does have a love story, but it's mostly a discussion of food and desire, and a book where the journey we take with the characters is way more important than the ending itself. I need to finish this recommendation with a warning that this book does explore some really heavy topics like eating disorders, fat phobia, religion, and mental health, so if you get triggered by any of those, read with caution. Next, in another tone shift, we have book number 8, Circe by Madeline Miller. It is a creative retelling of the myth of Circe, a powerful sorceress with immense knowledge of potions and herbs from Greek mythology. She's technically a goddess as one of Helios's children, but due to her lack of power in the beginning, she is ignored and mocked at home. After her heart gets broken, she finds her magic in her solitude and independence. And because Zeus just can't have a powerful woman just, doing whatever she pleases, he exiles her to an island to spend the rest of her days alone. Except it's like on a boat path or like on a ship path, so she gets a lot of guests for one reason or another, and her story and her character unfolds through these encounters. Madeline Miller is the author of The Song of Achilles that exploded on Book Talk a couple of years ago, and while I could have recommended that book because I really love it too, you already know I'm not going to do the popular picks here. Her retelling of the Circe myth explores female solitude, and the world blends both divine whims and mortal issues, and the writing is beautiful and the characters are vivid. Reading this book felt very indulgent to me, like I should have reclined on a beautiful couch while eating grapes and someone fanning me. And finally, I want to finish on a timeless classic that never fails to break a reading slump for me and has sometimes even helped me with life moments where everything was too much. I actually have 2 copies here. None of them are in English. Yeah, my final recommendation, number 9, is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It's the story of a child who has lived on a tiny asteroid and traveled the planets around him, meeting all sorts of quirky characters along the way. On Earth, he meets a fox who teaches him that bonds make things unique and meaningful. As you can already see, I have the book in multiple languages and even started learning French. Here's the French version, to try and read it as it was originally written. I discovered a bit later in my learning journey that it was written in French that is actually difficult for beginners because it's a little bit old, despite how the book's simple wisdom has been translated to so many languages. Why The Little Prince never fails to inspire me back into reading is because it reminds the reader of their responsibility to love and care for each other. It was written for one of the author's friends during wartime in 1943, and I can read into it a lot of reflections and ideas about being a good person, about solitude and longing for something more than the bleak reality of war. Its gentle arguments still hold up in the times we live in, and maybe more so as we seem to move further and further from our humanity. Yes, AI, I'm talking to you. I want to leave you with my favorite quote at the end of this video. It is the time you have devoted to her that makes your rose so important. Anything can be a rose, your passion, your relationships, even your own self. I'm a romance author, so I can't help myself. Don't forget to infuse everything you do with love. Then things will always fall into place. That's all from me for today. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what you think about them or what you plan to read next. Subscribe so we can hang out more often. And if you read dark romance, check out my books in the description. Thanks again. Bye.